Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 301 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. What did you think of episode 300? I have wanted to interview Reshma for such a long time, so I was very excited to have that opportunity. If you did not get the chance to listen to that episode 300 with Reshma Saujani, you should definitely go listen to that. Really, really powerful one. And that was such a gift to have that. I was so excited. Now, today I am excited to bring you someone else. Deo Kato is on the show today. Deo is a runner who has been using running as a form of activism for the last few years. And he's really started to create a movement that you're going to hear about how that has continued beyond his initial goal, his initial plan. And it's just a really cool concept, what he is doing. Why he feels like he is doing this. And we get pretty deep today into some of the elements of racism around the world that I haven't actually covered with a guest in this way before. And I think Deo explains some of this in a way that I think will be very impactful, particularly if you are someone who has been feeling a bit unsure of what to do within yourself or how to change things. I really think this will help. And part of growing with empathy is that we don't try and think about what other people are feeling, but we listen to them and walk with them as we hear their experiences. And today's episode with Deo is a great example of that. So I want to let Deo tell his own story. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors. They'll be right to this episode with Deo Kato. Thank you to Allbirds for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast and for just making me feel so appreciated and loved and looking after our community too. Allbirds is really trying to change the game. They believe that your carbon footprint for each product that is made or purchased should be as visible as price. They believe that is just as critical of a piece of information that we should know. And that is why Allbirds has the carbon emissions number on every single item they have. It's clear. It shows you, how they're working on things. You see the numbers changing over time, particularly when it comes to the shoes. Their shoes are far lower emissions than any other shoes on the market, and they are continuing to drive those numbers down. And they also have a great range of items for you to go check out, be it if you want running clothes or lifestyle clothes. And I'm actually surprised how many Allbirds items I see around. I have lots of different types of shoes from them, but I want to tell you about a few of the options today. So there's the running shoes. There is another pair of running shoes. I cannot tell you about it just yet, but there is a pair coming out this month, which is the pair I wore in Boston. I wore in Maui. I've been wearing for my workouts, but I will tell you more about that when I'm allowed to. However, for now, you can go check out the Tree Dashers 2, which can handle a regular run, but they are not really designed. They're kind of designed for every day plus a run. So if you're going on a short trip, you can easily add them in. I also have a lot of the other casual pairs of shoes that I wear every day. They are incredibly comfortable, and they don't wear through very often. That's one thing I've really enjoyed about them, is that you don't see them, you don't poke a hole in the top or you don't wear down the bottom. They really are made to last, and they're made of materials that are good for the planet, like wool. And the midsole is made of sugarcane, by the way. So they have these proprietary materials that they use to really use plant-based materials like castor bean oil that emits less carbon than petroleum foam, all kinds of things. Recycled laces, there's a lot that goes into this. So you can go to allbirds.com to go check out more and let them know I sent you. Deo, I am so excited to welcome you to the Running for Real podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Tina, for having me as well. I'm excited to be speaking with you.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I want to thank our mutual friend Warina for introducing us and for just continuing to send me people who have these incredible stories and things that they're doing. So I'm appreciative of her of introducing me to you and allowing us to explore your story today. But even those first few words would have allowed people to hear that while this is primarily a US based podcast, you are not from the US. So would you like to tell us, where you're from, where you live, and just a little bit about you, whatever you want to share?
Yes. Again, thank you to Walina for actually connecting us. She's an amazing woman, and what she does is really inspirational. Obviously, she's from the US as well, so we had a really good connection from both our respective countries that where we live from. So a bit about me. I'm from Uganda, born in Uganda, and I lived there until I was 10 years old. And I moved to the UK. I moved to London when I was 10. And I've been living in the UK for pretty much most of my life. Traveled a bit over different countries like Australia and New Zealand, where I lived for a bit. And
was that with your family, just traveling?
I traveled alone by myself.
Okay,
so I just packed up my bags and I went to explore different countries and see how it's like on the other side. So it's been quite interesting and quite amazing, like real good eye openers.
Yeah. I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. I'm always telling people here in the US, I mean, it's tricky in the US because they have everything in terms of like climates and mountains and ocean, like there is everything. So sure, everything is self-contained, but I always encourage people to get out of the country because it is incredible to see life through someone else's eyes, and especially for Americans who tend to think that like America has it best, that maybe other people do things differently, but that doesn't mean it's any less. So I would love to hear maybe a few of the things that you picked up about various cultures around the world that you did think, oh, that's pretty cool that they do that, or even just that shaped you at the time.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I actually just came from America not long ago for the first time. So I think one of the main, not just one of the main things, but quite a few things I've learned over time is like travel changes you as a person. Travel is one way of exploring and learning about the world, learning about yourself, and learning about other people and different cultures. And I mean, before I went to Australia and New Zealand, I hadn't traveled anywhere for many years, for over a decade. And I always wanted to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to go by myself and explore somewhere very different, like somewhere we don't explore. Yeah. I mean, when you're from from Uganda and many African countries, when we say like we're traveling, we travel like to go back to our countries. So we don't go and explore different countries. Don't go to like see other cultures. It's always like you come from the UK, go back to your country and you say you traveled. So I kind of wanted to break that for a little bit, like go somewhere I've never been before. Many people have never gone to for my culture. And it completely opened my eyes just to see how other people live and how other people are. And in Australia, it's kind of similar to the US where they have everything, have all different cultures. They have everything that you can find. And it's quite remote. So you can just easily just kind of like just pick up your stuff and just go to the UK, which is a very a long haul flight to travel from there to the UK. So you have to really engage and really, explore and immerse yourself in the culture.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I love that you said you went to, you were in New Zealand for 2 years, because that fully immerses you in that experience and allows you to not, it's a very different experience when you go somewhere for a week or two to actually staying there and living there and being a part of things. And I want to talk about that in a little bit. a little bit later. But during this time, were you a runner at all when you were traveling or growing up in the UK? How did running come into your journey?
Yeah, I was a runner when I started to travel. Kind of running came into into my life as a form of like trying to like heal my body, because I had some issues with, a bit of health condition that affected me from being able to run or being active in any way. As a child, I was very active and I used to explore and I used to jump around, and like that's things that you do when you're as a child, especially when you grow up in like a country like Uganda. But then at one point as a teenager, I developed a condition that made my body overheats, and heat gets trapped into my body, and it can't be able to like naturally kind of like come out. So I wouldn't be able to sweat naturally like any other person, especially when I'm in a warm environment. So when it's summertime, it's became a real problem. So going to university, going to work, going to do any activities like that, or daily things that any normal person would do, became extremely difficult. I would develop a massive rash all over my body. At its worst, I would feel like my brain is trying to expand out of my skull, and it feels like it's on fire. And I would be extremely itchy. Like to give you an example, how my body would feel would be like if I was to like fall into like a bush of nettles. And that's how my experience would be like at any point I'll be like in a hot environment. And that will happen like continuously through the day. So that was my experience during that time. The doctors couldn't be able to help me. I visited numerous doctors, numerous hospitals, specialists, anyone you can think of. They weren't able to help me in any way. So when I realized, I thought that running could be able to aid in some kind of way to support me to force my body to sweat. And that's the kind of hunch I had. I thought, you know what, if I can force my body to sweat, I would be able to overcome this.
And did you find you felt better after after you ran, or was it worse after, like later that day?
I felt better. I mean, the initial things would have been like mentally, I feel better. It started with the mental aspect of it. So so that's what started to change, and I felt a bit more happier. But also, it's kind of like looking at my diet, how I was like the things I'm putting in my body. Before all of that happened, I was like aspiring to be a footballer, and I would go out, play football, come back, finish the game, and go to like a chicken and chip shop and eat as much junk as possible. So I had to look at the diet as well. Healthy eating means you got a healthy mind and healthy body. So I started changing my diet. I started changing the way I do things, and that changed over time. It took a few years to get to the point where I was be able to run like more than 1 kilometer, go up to like a 5K. I can't say it was easy to get to that point. Yeah. It was extremely difficult because I started by running inside the house, like running up a 3-story house, like up and down stairs, until the point I was able to get outside. It sounds like when you put it down, it sounds like very easy from the point A to point B, but it was a journey of years to get to the point of being able to run 5 kilometers without any issues.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually, I don't want to say it's refreshing to hear that, obviously, because of the other health issues you were dealing with. But I think quite often in the running community, we mostly hear of people who say, oh, I'd always like thought about running, but then I tried it. Or maybe I'd never thought about running. I tried it, but then quickly I was able to get from this to this to this to this, and then I was off. Whereas like it sometimes doesn't click that easily, or like physically, or there's other things going on as well that need to be dealt with. So I think it's good for us as listeners to hear that despite that, you kept persevering, and sure enough, soon enough, it was a regular part of your life, making you feel mentally better, but also, I'm assuming, the physical, the sweat, the heat problems started to fade away.
They did, yeah. So the heat issues started to fade away. I started to be able to, for example, go outside when it's summertime without having to like carry bottles of water with me, without having to think about the type of clothing I'm wearing. So the time I was being affected, I would only wear, let's say, like a white t-shirt and only cotton. So I was very aware of like the materials wearing, the kind of like things I'll be carrying, like carrying bottles of water to like splash over my body just to like cool down every so often.
And why was cotton helpful?
Cotton was, let's say, like compare it to polyester and cotton. Cotton is a little bit okay to the skin, whereas
so
polyester,
it's like irritation.
Yeah, the irritation. Polyester kind of like when it rubs against your skin, it starts to warm your body up. So this, like, it was a lot of little things that you don't think about that I started to realize. Like, polyester kind of like rubbing against my body, it's the friction makes my body heat up. So I noticed all these little things that I'll have to change and adapt into my daily life while I'm still studying, while I'm still going to work, while I'm still like, I was trying to make sure that I can continue to do everything anybody will be able to do without seeming like I'm too affected by it. So definitely just kind of like persevering through everything. You just carry on and just see if you get to the end goal by pushing through. I mean, a lot of the time you just think like, you know what, I tried this. It seems to not work. So let me just move on to something else. But if you carry on and carry on, eventually you're going to get to the point where you say, you know what, it's actually like starting to work. And all I have to do is just kind of like tweak a little bit every now and then.
Yeah. Yeah. And so where are we at time-wise with what you're sharing here?
So what I'm sharing here is time-wise is around, after four years of going on a journey. It started when I was like 17 and I'm now like around 21 years old. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So then let's get into what you're doing now. So I think I'll just give you the space to explain what it is that you are doing, using running as a form of activism. And yeah, maybe if you could just share with us why you're doing that and what prompted you to take that step to use running.
Yeah. So running is a form of activism and running for justice. Running for peace and running for equality is basically that's the motto, and that's what it's come from. It's based from all my experience from coming from from Uganda to get into the UK, the experiences I've gone through. So when I arrived in the UK, I experienced a lot of racism myself as a young child. Not being able to speak English, I knew a bit of English, but it was very minimal. Being subjected to that kind of like racism, which is very systematic, but it's also in your face. And especially, when I was younger, it was a bit more in your face than it is now. But also the recent experiences that have been happening from 2020, especially. The murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and like that was a main catalyst to like bring the movement forward and say, you know what, I'm gonna run 381 days, 10K every single day, and run for justice. So when you, or like everybody else, and when I realized that and I saw that George Floyd had been murdered in front of our eyes, we all saw that, and it brought back a lot of memories, a lot of like trauma that you experience, and I said I need to do something about this. Started doing a bit of research about history, how everything was happening in many years before, and how we dealt with issues and how we could be able to change without without being forceful, be more peaceful about things, and show us, especially for my culture as Black and brown people, that we are more than just a color, that we have a lot more to offer to this world. We're not to be seen as a problem to society, as we're being portrayed in the media all the time. So I stumbled upon in history how the marches were being done in America, especially the Montgomery bus boycott, which ended up lasting for 381 days. And that was the main thing that I've stumbled upon. And I was like, whoa, if those guys were able to do a boycott for a bus company and they managed to last for 381 days, how is it possible? Maybe it's possible for me to be able to use my running and use that concept and say, you know what, I'm going to run for 381 days, 10K every single day. And it came off the research where I say it looked like when the guys were walking back then, they were either hitchhiking, they were either like walking, taking a bike and so on. Basically, the distance from home to where they had to go to wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to come from here, I'm going to walk 1 kilometer after there, and I've reached where I'm going to go. Some of them would have to go for many, many miles to go from point A to point B. And some are walking up to like 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers, and hitchhiking for much longer. So the 10K was kind of like an example of the difficulty we have to go through to deal with issues and be able to overcome those issues. You go through difficulty, and in the end, you'll be able to find a way through, even though you have to suffer, even though you have to deal with it every day. And every day you wake up and you say, you know what, I don't know if I can go through this today, but I have to do it. I'm going to carry on. I'm going to carry on today. I'm going to carry on tomorrow. Let's do this. Eventually, you're going to find a resolution. And that's what happened with the Montgomery bus boycott. Eventually, they found a way to make the company say, you know what, we're not going to segregate anymore. We're going to give you your rights.
Thank you to InsideTracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, I've been working with InsideTracker for many years now. I recently had my test done, and while my inner age was up a little bit, it's still thankfully under my actual age. And that was a good reminder to keep putting wellness first, keep putting my health first, because I want to keep that lower. I want to keep my inner age lower than my actual age. And I love that InsideTracker makes that really easy to do with that feature, but also within the regular settings and constraints of the app or on the website as well. So with the Ultimate package, you get 43 biomarkers. I've had 12 of those tests at this point. These biomarkers are taken by going to any Quest lab. You get your blood work taken, they send it back. Very simple, very easy. If you live outside of the US, you can also use the service to upload your own results from your doctor, and then InsideTracker can analyze it for you. But from there, they will give you your biomarkers essentially like a grade. They could be at risk, they could need improvement, and they can be optimized. So from there, you get to see your results, see which ones fit, see how things have changed over time. And then they will give you a way to select a goal, something that you want to focus on, and they can narrow down these health habits for you based on personalization of factors that you find important. It will give you actions and recommendations to follow, to continue to put yourself in the right path to getting as many of those optimized as you can. There's also recipes on the website. There's the science behind why each of these things is important and what you can do. And as I have mentioned before, one of my favorite features is that it will show you foods to add to your diet to move those markers more towards optimized so you can continue to grow over time. So I love the ease of the website, the ease, especially the app. They've done a really, really good job with the app. And it's just fun to identify trends, to read your personal recommendations, and to see, and if you want, you can also see how you compare to other users. So as a friend of mine, you can get 20% off InsideTracker. If this is something, if you've just been feeling off, if something doesn't quite feel right, we're getting into the summer months now. This is when it can get a bit dangerous if we start to ignore those health warning signs. So if you are feeling off, if you feel like something's not quite right, or you just feel like your body is a bit blah, this really is a great way to check in. Go to InsideTracker.com/Tina to get 20% off the entire website. That's InsideTracker.com/Tina. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that that information there with us. And you mentioned that, they didn't know they didn't know how they were going to get there. They didn't know when this was going to happen. They just kept going. And while running in 2020, 2021, 2022 is vastly different to the environment they would have faced back in 1955. It's still, we were in a pandemic. So there was still a lot of unknowns and what's going to happen. And so there was obviously going to be challenges there for you. Now, before we go any further into that and the specifics of just the literal logistics of that, when you were talking earlier about the reason I asked you about cotton was because that immediately jumped to me, and I'm assuming probably to you, that Ahmaud Arbery was wearing a white cotton shirt, right?
Yes.
So, I'm assuming that was a part of the impetus here of hey, I was running in a white cotton shirt for many years. I was running in something that literally allowed me to run. So yeah, talk to us about that.
Yes. So I get a lot of it's I don't even know how to put it. You get goosebumps when I think about Ahmaud Arbery as a runner, and thinking the places I've lived and the places I've gone through, the places I had to run through, a lot of those places have been very white spaces and very white environments that I had to run through. And I've lived in places where I'm the only Black person in that area. So when I think about Ahmaud Arbery and how he ended up losing his life, I think a lot that could have been me. I used to wear the white shirt while I'm running. I used to jog through white areas, and I still do now. A lot of it hasn't changed, but that could be me, could be any other Black person. The connections are so close. It just gives me so much goosebumps, and makes you worry quite a lot of what is, what can happen in a moment.
Especially with your desire to travel, and why shouldn't you travel?
Yeah.
You're maybe not gonna. I mean, when you said about New Zealand, that also came to my mind. New Zealand, I haven't been to New Zealand, but from what I hear, New Zealand has, plenty of very, very white spaces, and they're definitely a lot more peaceful, maybe, than some of the other countries around the world. But I definitely could imagine that is the case quite often when you travel, and you know, who knows what kind of area you're going to run through as you're traveling around. So how do you allow that to, I mean, I guess especially moving forward, how are you going to allow yourself to continue to explore without your entire run almost being that like feeling of you're being watched, of like, oh, could that be someone? Is that, you know, how do you continue to, before we go into that, the strike you're doing, or the activism, I'd just, maybe we could pull on that a little bit.
Yeah. To be honest with you, Tina, it's continuously worrying.
Yeah.
There's so many spaces I want to go and explore and be able to run in and feeling free and not worry about what could happen. There's so many countries I want to visit. I see myself as an adventurer, as more like, say, an explorer as well. I want to open up the eyes of my, you know, my native people and my family and everybody else, you know, like to see this old, you know, the world is free. We can be able to go anywhere we want to go, but you're always worried about what could happen. I've lived in places where it's like you've been the only Black person in the space, and sometimes they've never seen a Black person for maybe forever, or they only ever see them on TV. I went to Taiwan by myself again, and the language barrier is one issue. Being in a very small town is one issue, and I was seen as kind of like a figure that has never been seen before. And I'm going there and I'm still running. In New Zealand, I'm going there and I'm still running, but they're a lot more friendly and a lot more less hostile about who you are and the color of your skin. But then again, you still get the looks. You still get the people looking at you and say, oh, this guy is running. And you have that kind of like thing where people look at you because people see marathon runners and they see a Black person leading and running. So already they kind of connect you to being the Black guy that runs because of what they see as a marathon runner that runs all the time. But the reality is not many Black people do run, apart from what you see at the leading pack of a marathon. And that's a very small number. So trying to like break those barriers and trying to like say, you know what, I'm okay to run in this space. I'm okay to go here. I'm free to be able to go anywhere I want to go is a worry, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's not a case of like, I'm going to stop here because of this situation. I'm going to do it anyway because it's, for me, I'm free to explore where I want to explore.
It's interesting you mentioned about the front runners in many of the major races and what people would have seen. Like, granted, there's a lot of people around the world who have no idea there are, like, you know, the New York Marathon or the London Marathon. Like, they just doesn't even exist in their minds. But for countries in the global north, particularly like the US, the UK, I would imagine Australia, they do see people out at the front. And it is interesting, though, that that can be the case and people can hold that in their minds that, like, oh, these runners are really fast. They're really good at what they do. Yet past that very top elite level, it's very much a white space, very, as you said, you can be the only person out there. And to the point to where what we were talking about earlier, many of the Black and brown runners who have been on the show have all talked about wearing bright clothing or making sure their clothing is very running, like very clearly running clothing, so they feel safer. And it's just hard to understand how those two things can both exist, that a Black and brown person could feel unsafe, yet also maybe be assumed to be an elite athlete. I suppose if you have the build or you have the, I don't know, speed to be even considered that way. But is there anything else you want to add to that? It's hard for me to wrap my mind around maybe I should include myself in here, how white people and maybe even I at times have been able to see those two things and not be able to put together like, hey, where's everyone else back here and in with everyone else, in with the pack?
Yeah.
Masses.
Yeah. It's crazy. I suppose I'll give you an example. It's like when I talked about starting to run, when I first started to run like marathons and ultra marathons, I was speaking to my white friends. And when I speak to my white friends or white colleagues and I tell them that, you know what, I'm going to take on this challenge. I'm going to run this marathon. I'm going to run an ultra marathon. I signed up to this challenge. My white friends and white colleagues would say, oh yeah, but a lot of Black people run. That's what they see at the front, like Black people winning and Black people running. Yes. But when I spoke to my Black friends and brown friends and family and so on, they saw that I'm taking on what people take on all the time. Oh, so you're going to do what white people are doing all the time. Mm-hmm. And they, especially when I talk about ultra running, because that's my area, ultra running and trail running, it's straight away is that, oh, so you're going into the white space. So those two worlds, and what we see all the time is that white people see us as runners, Black people, that's what they do. But when you go into my area, Black friends and my family, all they see is that space is only for white people.
Mm-hmm. When you look around as well, right? When you're in a race and you look around.
Yeah. When I look around, that's all I ever see. It's very difficult to see another Black face, another Black runner. And obviously, when we are at the start line, we are dressed more in bright clothes and want to stand out, want to be seen. Because if you're out there and you're blended into the background of everybody else, you're not gonna be seen at all. You're almost non-existent. So we have to consider a lot of things before we even step out. For me, people look at me now because I'm an ultra runner and I run a lot. And I don't talk about so much about what I go through in the background before I even get out the door, especially because I've been doing the running streak. The mental kind of like training that you have to do every single day to say, right, I'm going to be putting on my shoes. But before that, what do I have to like mentally train myself? Okay, it's okay for me to go outside. Today is going to be a good day. Today I'm not going to be faced with any issues. Nobody's going to go into my way. Nobody's going to try to look at me in a certain way. I'm going to run in this area. I mean,
these are like affirmations that you're telling yourself?
Not necessarily like affirmations, but it's more of like considerations.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more like considerations. Like, you know what, I'm going to consider this. I'm going to go run in this certain area. It's a lot more, let's say, urbanized, as quote unquote urbanized that we consider. But maybe tomorrow I'm going to run in this, a more affluent area. So tomorrow I'm going to consider things a bit more differently compared to what I've considered when I'm running in more in the urban area. So it's like you think about so many little things, and before you even put on your top, before you even put on your shoes, before you consider what kind of top you're going to wear, it's more of saying, am I safe before I actually go out there?
Yeah.
And I step out the door. Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that, because, yes, as a woman, is there some extent of that question, some parts of that question in my mind or in many women listeners' minds? Yes. But I think that's really good for myself and potentially others to hear, of just that reminder of how much weight that adds to each and every run, to have those considerations in there. And so thank you for, opening up and sharing that with us. I'd like to read a quote that you said. I actually don't know where I found this. I'm assuming it was on Instagram, but maybe not. It said, running is a vehicle that we use to either get away or to go towards something. For many years, I thought I was running towards bettering myself, but in the grand scheme of things, I was trying to escape uncomfortable situations, to fit the mode, or to look down at others for not looking after themselves. So I ran and exercised. Can you talk to us a little about what you meant by that? Is that related to what we were just talking about, or is that something else, deeper within you?
It was a lot of things I could say probably throughout my life. My long life journey. I would say long life journey. I'm not that old, but
Did you say you're 21?
Hopefully I'm 21. I'd love to be 21 again.
You're not 21.
I'm not 21. I'm 34.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a reasonable. As a almost 34-year-old myself, I can say that we've lived enough life to have some lessons.
Yeah. It's a quote where I've been like going on a journey, and sometimes when you look around you, you feel like everybody else is doing good, especially when you look on Instagram and everybody's like got babies here, is got doing this, and obviously because when you look on especially Instagram, you see a window, you're looking through someone's window, you don't get to see the whole house or inside the whole house or what's happening. All you see is the window that's framed. So in my life, I've been like kind of like chasing a certain goal, chasing something, and trying to escape from who I thought I was. I was trying to escape my background as a Black person. I was trying to fit more into a mode of what people wanted me to be closer to, even though my skin color will never change, I wanted to be, as a young person, as a new runner, to be more accepted in the world community, and try to run away from my culture as a Ugandan, as an African, as a Black man. So all of these kind of come together within the code. And it's been a long journey to try to discover myself, and I'm still on the journey of discovery. But now I feel more that I understand who I am and what my goal is and what my running is about.
Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast, and for keeping our community working well, having this foundational nutrition, comprehensive daily nutrition that is just made as simple as one scoop in some water is how I start my day every day. And now we are traveling a lot for the summer for some of us, winter for others, but this tends to be a time of year that we travel. It is made from the highest quality ingredients in accordance with the strictest standards, and it is obsessively improved based on the latest science. They will show you the full ingredient list, but it contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients, which gives you the antioxidant equivalent of 12 servings of fruits or vegetable in every scoop, which is what I like to begin my day with. And it just gives me that insurance policy that I am taking care of my body, regardless of what I end up eating that day. It is also NSF Sport certified. And it's going to it's essentially like combining all your supplements and other health products in one. So you have that one thing to take every day. There's a travel packet. There's plenty of those that you can take with you. And it's better than taking pills. Who likes taking pills? I definitely don't. So this has been optimized for athletes, for life-leets, everyone in between. It doesn't matter what your diet is. This is going to work well for you. So friends, as a Running for Real listener and a friend of mine, you can get a 1-year free supply of vitamin D and some free travel packs by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. That's athleticgreens.com/Tina. Go check it out. Go see what everyone else is talking about. And you're going to love it. I know I do. Thank you for, that's some introspective thinking there. You must have done a lot of work on yourself, either within these runs of just thinking through, what running means to me, what you mean to yourself, but also, just in general, like that's a very thoughtful thing that, I have white skin. I cannot speak to your experiences, but there's got to have been a lot of time and quiet spaces that you've given yourself to work to realize that.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I love to take a lot of quiet time, and from that I do a lot of runs. So, for example, a few of my favorite places to do my thinking is that I'll go out on a long run, and then I'll go out like sit on top of like a mountain or big hill out there in nature, and just take some time to really think and look at the world around you. I look at the world around me, and I'm like, take that real time to think deeply and take in and soak in the world and really think about all the other things I've been through my life. It's that moment, it's that little moments of like, we've gone through a bit of suffering. So take the time to like consider what's been happening and how you feel, and do that where in your favorite sport. And one or a few of my favorite sports are being on top of a mountain and seeing the world.
I feel you 100%. I love to do that in the middle of my trail run. I did that just 2 days ago, being out in the trails, just like stop and you like feel the blood rushing, you feel like your heart beating, and then you just sit in the quiet. And it is just the best. So yes, I feel you with that. That's one of my favorite things as well. Although I can't say I've run up mountains, but someday on my journey, my version of mountains. Okay, so let's talk about a few logistical things with what you've been doing. And for the listeners, what day are you on now? Or I guess this is going to be a week before it comes out, but where are you?
So I actually finished the Running for Justice 381 days. I completed it last year on the 21st of June. And then soon afterwards, another runner stepped in and they took on a month of running. So, and then another runner stepped in after that month and they took on another month. So since then, since when I finished, we turned the Running for Justice and 381 days into a relay. So every day someone is out there, they're running. Someone is like, calling out for change. They're running for peace and running for equality. And when we talk about running for peace and equality, it's not just about the Black people. We're running for equality for all humans and nature and the environment and everything that surrounds that on this globe that we live on the planet. Equality matters to everybody.
Yeah.
Equality is essential. And then we try to tend to like put it in small pots, for Black people, for women, for LGBTQ plus. but it's for everybody. So when somebody's out there, when I'm out there, another person's out there, for this really, we're running for everybody. So this really means a lot. It's kind of like turning it to be the longest run protest in history.
Mm-hmm.
So once we finish the 381 days that's going now, it's going to carry on and be another 381 days. So far we're like on 645 days. I'm not exactly remember how many days, but it's been going for over 600 days.
Yeah.
We're almost at the finish for this 381 days. We're going to finish on the 7th of July.
Okay.
And then we're going to go again. Another.
So can someone listening take one of those months?
Yes, absolutely. Someone who's listening and they're passionate about change and they're passionate about equality, fighting for, using the word fighting, but, want to be a vehicle for equality, change, and, ending racism. Absolutely. Everybody's welcome to come on board. Everybody's welcome to jump on and take on a month or 2 weeks. So, yeah,
okay. I'll put your social media in the show notes anyway, so people can reach out to you if they want to be a part of that. Okay, so I just want to share one other thing about that before we go into just a few other little things. Well, not little things, but two other things I want to ask you about. One is that running with something this important as the reason. There must have been fears at times of what if I get injured, or as we said, we're in a COVID time, which spoiler alert did become a part of the situation. Yeah. How did you handle the fact that you were doing this, but there was a very real chance that you could end up with a pelvic stress fracture or something? And then what do you do? Like, how did you handle that mentally of knowing that could always happen?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Luckily, touch wood, I haven't been injured to an extent where I have to be completely out. Luckily enough. But that kind of like looms around your head all the time. It's like, it's there, you think about it. So, and especially because you're not, I'm not just going out there and running a mile or running a kilometer.
Exactly.
I'm running, 6.5 miles every single day. And sometimes I did run like a marathon in between. I ran an ultra marathon and I threw in as many things I could throw in while I'm out there. I mean, I ended up climbing the biggest mountain in the UK on top of that. But the part of like injury of anything can go wrong did play on my mind quite a lot. At one point we had to self-isolate while I was doing the challenge. So I had to think of ways I could be able to go around that. So I ended up running inside the house. And I'm not talking about running on a treadmill. I'm running from one end of my front door to the back end of the house. And I ended up doing that for 2 days of self-isolation until we got the all clear to go back outside. And then during the challenge, I caught COVID and I became very sick. And that's the point where I kind of had to stop running. And that took for 2 weeks. But luckily enough, the community which I built up over the pandemic, especially, it stepped in for me and they say, look, while you're sick and while you can be able to run, we are going to carry on the relay for you. And we are going to be running some miles every day until you get better and you can be able to carry on again. So my Black Trail Runners family have been incredibly helpful, and I was really grateful for them for that. And so after I became, after that recovery from COVID, I go on again and I went out running again. But luckily, I haven't been, I wasn't injured enough to like completely get out there. Stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm assuming that's where the idea for the relay came along after that. You thought, oh, you know, I don't have to be the only one out here on my own doing this. Like, yeah, we can do it as a team, which is part of the point, right? That we all come together to make change happen here. Thank you for, I mean, I'm sure that would have been in people's minds. That certainly would have stressed me out, especially during COVID times of, you know, you don't know how you're going to react to this. So to go into, you mentioned that you ran a marathon and an ultra around the highest mountain in Britain during that time. Now we hear a lot of conversations, especially, we were hearing a lot of conversations in the US in 2020 about this kind of, unfortunately, maybe as expected, the conversations have kind of faded off a little bit, but we hear about it a lot in the US. Now we knew the US news somewhat showed other protests happening around other parts of the world, but the UK isn't typically somewhere where people think this was happening. And I have to admit, like growing up in the UK, that wasn't something I was aware of. I've never said this publicly, but I definitely saw and called out racism against brown people quite a lot where I was from. Mm-hmm. And that really didn't sit well with me at the time. But I didn't really notice or even think about anything towards the way that the Black people in my class at school were treated or felt until later. Now, that said, you ran these races. You had a sign calling out racism on the start line. You're in the UK. Mm-hmm. How did that feel? Sorry, there was a lot of information there. If you want to process one part and then the other, you can.
Yeah. It's quite interesting that, you know, the last couple of years have brought to light a lot of the racial issues that have been boiling over for many, many years. And it's good that it's happened. So now we can start to process it properly. You know, we have to sit in it and understand that it's happening. And as you've mentioned that, you know, back in your school and so on, you never had to think about that, but it's been happening in the background. A lot of us have been experiencing it, and it had to take drastic, like real drastic things to happen for it to
be undeniable, right?
Yeah, to be undeniable. And it's unfortunate that it has to come to that point for things, you know, for change to start happening. But then again, it's happened for, you know, like companies and so on. People have only taken it on for a certain period, and then they say, okay, now we have to move on. We can't keep talking about this. Let's keep talking about something else. So it is something that has to continuously be talked about in order for it to change. If we keep covering it up every single time, it's never going to change. It's never going to be completely gone. Racism will still be there. So to go into a point of like, you know, I've been standing a lot of the time. I do a race. I have like a T-shirt. I have a banner. I have a sign calling out racism. I mean, I ran the London Marathon, which is the biggest platform you can run on, with the Black Lives Matter sign. I mean, standing on that start line, for me personally, is very nerve-wracking.
Yeah,
I'm very worried of how the situation can turn out, or the people can encounter, because the UK has a way of like saying, you know, this isn't happening in our house. You know,
no,
it's not here.
That's not the UK.
Yeah, exactly. It's happening everywhere else, but not the UK. And we all know that it happens here, and the UK is kind of like the main countries that started the whole point, the whole racial issues.
Yeah.
So they can't deny that it's not happening here. It worries me a lot when I go on the start line and I have a sign and I'm a black man calling out people who feel uncomfortable about race, about racism. So I love the time when I start and I'm like, how do I take out this sign? How do I show it to people? How do I go about calling out this issue? I'm very nervous at the start line. I'm like, oof. Do I take it out now? Do I take it out when I'm running? Do I take it out during the middle of the run? How am I carrying it? Is this person next to me, that's standing next to me, is going to be the one that is the problem? And is he or she or them, are they going to be the problem that's that's standing in my way? Or are they the ones that have been racially, abusing somebody out there? So all these things are going on in my head. And while I'm on the start line, I say, right, let's just go. I've got the top on. I've got the sign. Let me just put it out there, even though I'm scared of what could happen. I am so worried of what's going on or how it's going to go down. And I'm thinking like maybe even if I finish the race, somebody could be following me and they could find out where I live and they could do something. All these things are processing in my mind and I'm worried. And nobody gets to see that process.
Yeah.
As I go out there, I'm saying, you know what, I'm just going to blank all this out of my head. While I'm running, I'm going to put on a big smile. I'm going to put in people's faces. I'm going to show that I am not the stereotype. And that is something that as Black people, all the time is what we try to do. We always trying to tell people we are not the stereotype of what we're being portrayed in the media, in movies and everywhere else, is we're always saying we are not the stereotype. And then again, I'm still calling it racism, but I'm still saying I'm not the stereotype. It's a lot to carry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a lot to be carrying on your shoulders as a person. And it's a lot of worry that you go through. What my work that I do carries a lot of weight, carries a lot of, because I'm not just like, just going out there with a banner and so on. I'm doing a lot of research in the background as well. I'm researching and I'm reading about things. I'm reading about history, how things happened, really digging deep. I'm like pulling the layers out. I'm saying that, okay, if the UK says they're not racist, what about what you did, many years ago in Africa? So let's bring that to the surface. So I'm bringing a lot of things to the surface, but all the research I've been doing are very deep and very dark history that I have to dig through. So I am digging through this real dark history. I need to bring it to the surface. I need to tell this truth, but also I kind of need to tell it in a bit more in a positive way, or in a way that doesn't bring too much trauma to people that have experienced it. So there's a lot of work that goes through the low processing, and mentally for myself, I have to find ways to be able to think differently and not let it get to me too much. Yeah.
Well, I mean, as you said, That is a huge weight to carry on top of doing something that is really, really difficult, particularly in races, but just in general. Running is always going to bring forward those thoughts of doubt or discomfort. Our body wants to stop. That's a lot. And the way you explained that, I think that's the best someone has explained and made it clear how emotionally exhausting that is to be, as you said, doing all this research, reading up, learning, reading about trauma that hits you on a like really deep level, but then still having to come up to the surface and, as you said, put it out in a way that is, you're constantly trying to break the stereotype. And that in itself is exhausting, like having to constantly be thinking about how you're coming across. I mean, thank you for sharing that with us. That is, so hard, so tiring. And I just really appreciate your vulnerability and willingness to share that with us. That really is powerful. And this conversation has really impacted me just with what you have shared, and really solidifying a lot of things that I have heard or read or learned about, but also hearing it from your perspective and how it ties into running. So, Deo, how can people support you? How can people find you and follow along in future?
Yes, people can find me on, so I have 2 Instagram pages. So the first one for Running for Justice, 381 days, is Deo Runs _381. That's more of a community Instagram page. And then my personal one is Deo Runs, which is my past PT page, kind of like running coaching page. But yeah, you can find me on that. You can be able to email me, which you can through those Instagram pages. And so that's kind of like main ones I use.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything today. I really have enjoyed our conversation. It's been hard hitting and needed. So I appreciate all that you're doing. I look forward to continuing to support you in the future. And again, just so thankful to have met you. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you too, Tina. Great to speak with you. And we need to have these more conversations on platforms, all platforms, so not to hide away in the background.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, friends. Just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. So appreciative of Deo for sharing that with us. That was very powerful. That was something very meaningful, and it impacted me. I really, as I said, felt like he explained that in such a way that I think it gives us, or gives me, the motivation to do something. And I fully intend to be one of the people taking on a month at some point. We spoke about that afterwards, and I hope you will consider reaching out to him to either support him through just saying, keep going, like I see you, I see what you're doing, or to sign up as someone to participate, to carry on in this relay. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. And I also want to take a moment to tell you that everything we talked about today, the links will all be in the show notes, which you can find at runningforreal.com/episode 301. And in there will also be information about our sponsors. And you can check those out by, I just tell you them, I suppose. You can go to allbirds.com to go check out what they are up to, and go check out those beautiful new flyers that I wore in both the Boston Marathon and the Maui Marathon. They are amazing. You can go check them out on the Allbirds website. Also, thank you to InsideTracker. You can get 20% off and check out how your body is doing on the inside by going to InsideTracker.com/Tina. And thank you to our dear friends at Athletic Greens for coming with me on my travels lately, for always keeping me and my body in a good place, and just for supporting those of us who are working really hard to make change happen. So thank you to Athletic Greens. You can get a 1-year free supply of vitamin D plus 5 free travel packs by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. Thank you so much for listening, my friends. I'll see you on Wednesday for a running reunion, Monday for another Together Run. I'll see you then.